bereaved family of Clinton Ludlow McCurbin, together with a large procession of mourners, make their way to St. Mary's Church in Wolverhampton. McCurbin died during a struggle with two police officers in February this year. His death has sent shockwaves throughout the black community here. It has also raised the question of whether excessive force was used and led to serious criticism of the police's conduct in the whole affair.
Up to now, the truth hasn't come out. I've heard a lot of different versions, and nobody seems to know the exact truth, We tried to locate a few of the people that were in the store, to give us some of the versions, the true version. But still, I'm not satisfied.
I don't know how people can, close their eye and say, it doesn't matter, it's just a black man, getting up to no good, it serves him right. But I don't know how they could say that and not realise they've taken somebody's life.
For him to just die and die in vain at such an early age would be a very sad thing. Nothing at all we say or do at this present moment will bring him back. But I think at least we should have some justice come out of it for Clinton.
Clinton McCurbin was 24 years old at the time of his death. Born in Wolverhampton, he was the eldest son of Clinton and Esther McCurbin. He was a welder by trade. He is the second of 3 black people to die in police custody this year. It happened here, in the center of Wolverhampton's busy main shopping center, at some time between 11:45 and 12 noon on Friday the 20th of February. Police were called to a fashion chain store next in Dudley Street, where a shop assistant suspected that McCurbin might be using a stolen credit card. There were several eyewitnesses to the events that followed. Some of those who told Bandung File what they saw prefer to remain anonymous.
I was coming from the Civic Centre, Wolverhampton's town council housing place, and I was attracted to the next shop by like a thump of somebody's back against the door, like a scuffle going on inside the shop. I went over and stood right in the exit of the shop, and I seen this young Jamaican kid, and the 2 police officers had him firmly against the 2 inner doors of the shop. The bigger officer, who had McCurbin round the neck, had kneed him in the chest. To me, I could see that the fellow was in pain, because he'd leaned forward, and at the same time there was instantaneous blows. Well, I say 8 or 9 blows, which knocked him to the front glass of the window, and the glass window smashed.
The next minute, these 2 policemen, they're getting down on the ground, face downwards. They're getting face downwards, and one holds him by his neck like this, and the other puts his arms behind his back and hold him down like that. The next minute, a customer comes and helps a policeman. One holds his legs at the back to stop his legs moving around. And I noticed the policeman at the front, right? He was using a lot of force on his neck. Kept on using a lot of force.
Did he say anything to the fellow?
He says I think I heard him say, right, "Are you all right?" a couple of times to him, right? He was asking the West Indian if he was all right, but every time he asked him, he pulled his neck up even further, right? So it looked like Clinton was just struggling because he was in pain.
And what happened after that?
It looked like as if Clinton had just fainted or something. He just went dead. The policeman was still holding him by his neck. Then reinforcements come or something. More police come, and they just dragged him to the back of the shop.
Did they try to give him find out if he was all right, or did they try to give him first aid or anything?
No. They just dragged him to the back, that's it.
It began when police were called to a shop where a man was reported to be using a stolen...
The death of Clinton McCurbin had soon become national news.
Passers-by claim they saw how it happened.
I was walking past the shop, and there's this coloured man on the floor, There's one man wrapped around his legs, one sitting on his back, and this big copper, like, at his neck, right back, and he was just, like, yanking it.
And there was a woman, another coloured woman there, and she was really upset. She was going, loose his neck, I'm going to kill him. And they just says, well, if you want to file a complaint, go down the police station.
When a person's being arrested and that person is being violent, I mean, it's possible, and indeed perfectly legitimate, for the police to use sufficient force to restrain that man. And I think it's already been established that the man wasn't very keen on the idea of being arrested to start with, which probably resulted in his in the scuffle that took place.
Are you saying that even though the man died, the police didn't use excessive force?
It appears that way at the moment.
In my opinion, the force was far too excessive, and I've said the same to several newspapers, to the Caribbean Times and to the Express and Star.
Did you see Clinton McCurbin at any point strike any of the officers?
No, the kid was he didn't he didn't have any intentions of fighting or anything like that, because if he had any intentions of fighting, I mean, I was standing right where it happened, and if he had any intentions of fighting, he wouldn't have been dead now.
Put it like this, there was 3 of them holding him down. So the policeman at the front, he could have just eased down. He wouldn't have needed to use so much force.
By 2 p.m. that afternoon, a crowd had gathered outside Next. The 2 arresting officers were ushered out through the back to a waiting police car. Tension was rising, and rumors had begun to spread that a black man had been choked to death by the police. 2 community workers, Joan Blaney and Simeon Green, were invited into the store by a senior police officer. The information they were given was soon to be the subject of controversy.
The police invited us in to say that we could have an independent version of what had actually occurred, and we were told that we were going to speak to the shop supervisor, whose name is Mr. Scully, and we could ask him a few questions.
And what did Mr. Scully say?
Well, he just basically explained that a young man had come in and he was a bit suspicious of him. He was trying to use a credit card, and that the young man didn't seem normal. So I asked him what he thought was normal, and why he thought, because he also said that he thought it appeared that he was on drugs. And I asked him how he actually came to that particular conclusion, that the young man was on drugs. And he said that it was because he wasn't very polite, he was very quiet, and that his eyes appeared to be half closed.
We went into the shop and we spoke to a chief superintendent. I think his name was Bagley. And he told us that his officers had received a call from the assistants in Next, saying that a young Afro-Caribbean male had come in trying to use a credit card which they suspect was stolen. His officers arrived on the scene, tried to arrest him, that there was a struggle, that due to some medical condition that he got, and the fact that he'd been taking drugs, his heart gave out and he died. He said that at this stage, he said that he didn't know the guy's name, and that's what made me suspicious straight away, even if I hadn't heard what people had been saying outside. The fact that he didn't know the guy's name, but yet knew that he was supposed to have had an heart condition.
At this time, it was then that a police officer actually intervened and said that he had forgotten to mention the fact this young man had been carrying a hammer wrapped up in a white piece of cloth in a carrier bag.
Did Mr. Scully confirm this?
No, he didn't. In fact, that, in my opinion, threw him completely, and he became even more nervous. And at this stage, because everyone was actually stunned by this new revelation, they said, look, you know, is there anything else you'd like to know? And I said, I don't think there's any point in carrying on with this, because I felt it was quite obvious, a bit of a set-up job, and it was a complete waste of time.
The police have since denied all knowledge of the allegation that McCurbin had been carrying a hammer. According to eyewitnesses, it was over 2 hours before the ambulance arrived. During that period, the police arranged for reinforcements to be brought in. With a riot squad in place, the body of Clinton McCurbin was removed.
The word had got round very quickly. There was a lot of concern. The atmosphere was not a very nice atmosphere, to say the least. Soon after the ambulance arrived to take the body of the dead person away, a senior police officer also arrived, and the situation up to that point had been deteriorating. Because of the action that was taken at the time, that was diffused, and the ambulance managed to get away. But the people who had congregated spilled out into the surrounding area, and disorder did take place.
After the ambulance went, the riot squad sort of moved down the street to clear it. Anybody that got in the way was either knocked out the way, or if they couldn't get out the way quick enough, were taken through the lines, either pushed away or thrown into the back of a van. I saw one particular incident where there was a young black woman with a little girl of about 3 or 4. She was sort of scooped up by a snatch squad that went through the police lines, and the little girl was left on her own crying in all this confusion. I picked the little girl up, pushed my way through the lines, and sort of went to the van and demanded that she was released. You know, she was doing her shopping, just caught up in the disturbance. Obviously had nothing to do with it. They agreed to that. I gave her a daughter. She said thank you. Ran off in tears, and as I was walking away, one of the officers kicked the back of my foot and said, "One's dead, you could be number 2."
About 5 p.m. that evening, without the benefit of a post-mortem, the police issued a statement saying that Clinton McCurbin had died as a result of a heart attack brought on by drugs. Before the day was over, a Home Office post-mortem contradicted the police's version. It reported that the cause of death was asphyxia. No trace of drugs was found in McCurbin's body, and the police withdrew their earlier statement. The following day, Chief Constable Jeffrey Dare was unapologetic in his defense of what had turned out to be an inaccurate and misleading statement.
But the rumours on the street were, and they were put out maliciously, he died through being beaten to death, stabbed to death, had his neck broken. And they were very, very significant. And we, having taken the very best medical advice, which was given to us in the very best of knowledge, was that it was almost certain he died of cardiac arrest, probably enhanced by drugs. And bearing in mind, this is what witnesses were saying to a doctor. And against the background of rumour and a very volatile situation in Wolverhampton, it seemed, and I'm convinced, I plead my own case, of course, I have to aim off because I'm obviously prejudiced in this, I'm convinced it was the right decision. It is a pity, in a sense, that the post-mortem contradicted it. And it's a pity that the information wasn't always translated with the caveat that this must be subject to a post-mortem, but it appears that in medical advice. But it was a frank statement of the position as it appeared.
But the criticism has been made that the police's real intention was to create a convenient stereotype, since just a few months earlier, drugs had been cited as a factor in the death in police custody of Anthony Lemard, another black man.
I think I was crazy. I was going out of my mind. Because Clinton had never, even as a child, to look, he didn't like smoke. He didn't like anything to do with smoking at all. And drugs would be, the drugs they were talking, I guess, was it's either drinking or marijuana or some other form of, that sort of drugs, which I know Clinton would not do, would not take any form of drugs.
At the initial hearing of the inquest into McCurbin's death, Paul Boateng, the family's lawyer, accused the police of deliberately trying to discredit the character of McCurbin.
We have witnessed by the West Midlands police a calculated and cynical attempt to smear this young man's name. It is our intention to make sure that the inquest procedure fully explores the tragic circumstances of his death, and to make sure that at the end of the day, blame is apportioned where it is due in the light of the facts, not dangerous speculation.
The press, too, have contributed to a misleading and inaccurate picture of McCurbin.
We should be allowed to prosecute them because Clinton was never ever a Rasta. He hasn't got the thought of being a Rasta, nor the looks of being a Rasta. And if they call somebody to look at them, the police was there. He hasn't even got a half an inch a hair on his head.
It's not fair to Clinton. He's dead, but I know it's not fair to him. and his brothers and sister that is left behind. So at the end of this, I think, I'm going to seek out how do I go about prosecuting these people. Because there was no need to say that.
We have gathered here today to mourn a loved one and to honour a departed friend, Clinton McCurbin.
At the funeral, the congregation of over 1,000 filled the Church of St. Mary's to capacity. The many friends and relatives of the McCurbins share their sense of outrage and amazement at the picture of Clinton that had been painted by the police and press. Their memories of him were as a member of the Boys Brigade and attending the local Sunday school. His love of soul music was nurtured in the church. The sermon was preached by Bishop Pastor T.D. McCullough, his former Sunday school teacher.
Therefore, as we come together, we are mourning this afternoon, we are sad, we are nervous, and some is bitter, and we have got the press here and everyone, but I'm glad that sooner or later the pressmen will be standing before God, the policemen will be standing before God. Jesus said, behold, I come quickly, and my reward is with me to pay every man according as his work shall be.
When we want to marry Marcia, remember when we went to Huntington wedding?
Me didn't get any,
No?
No, not one. I said, asked me, say, well, come then we just have to go to the wedding.
We had good times as kids growing up, mother
the wedding.
And kids, it was like 4 boys. On a Saturday afternoon, we always get together. After they take the bath and things, and we always have these little, the music would be on, and we would be playing music and breaking cake and having little, like a snowballs and say, and we always do it like competition. The one who can dance the best will get the most drink or the most cake, and it used to be fun. And he always said, I'm the best, he said, look at me, and laugh at the others. Clinton was fun to be with, but as I said, there are times when he just want to be by himself and with John. But he had a lot of, potential too. I don't know.
Clinton McCurbin lived here alone in a council flat in Bovey Court, Wednesfield. Known as Cheyenne to his family and friends, they describe him as a quiet sort of person who kept himself to himself. When you heard the news of his death, how did you respond to it?
Well, I couldn't believe that it was him, to tell you the truth.
Why?
Because I couldn't seem to get into a position where he would, die. Like, he's the type of person that will stand up for himself when needs be, but he's not a violent type of person in any way.
The police and the press have made a lot out of the fact that he was convicted for assault. Did you know him to be a violent sort of person?
No, I think he was being provoked. Clinton will, he won't fight, he won't put up a fight, but he will not run away from one. That I can, as a child growing up, I know. And he'll give up his right, but he will fight back if he has to fight. So when they say assault, his former boss, he was working, I guess he was provoked, which I think he had layoff from a job or something. So I guess he was being provoked why he was, he get to that stage. And that's about the only thing I know Clinton ever involved in.
Sharon wouldn't steal. Definitely not. Sharon wouldn't steal something. If Sharon have a card, the card is his, right? It's not a stolen card. If he went into the shop next with a card, the card was his. They can't tell me that the card he has have no credit left on it, but they couldn't tell me he's got a stolen card. Because you know how some people can steal things or some people can do a certain thing. Maybe because he was a Church of God Christian child, that kind of way when you bring up your children in Church of God, that kind of a shame that it left on them that won't let them do a certain kind of things.
The question remains as to whether the credit card was in fact stolen. This is one of the issues which needs to be clarified by the Police Complaints Authority, who were asked to investigate the case by the police themselves within hours of McCurbin's death. Police Constables Hobday and Thomas, the two arresting officers involved, have been placed on sick leave since the incident occurred in February. The Police Complaints Authority took the unusual step not to recommend their suspension pending possible charges.
Well, it would be wrong for me to prejudge it, but certainly you and I would both expect in most circumstances like this that there would be an immediate suspension. And you're right, they have not been suspended. I have to take advice quite properly from the Police Complaints Authority, and they'll tell me if they think that the circumstances justify suspension. And they haven't said that, and I think you can read something into that.
Faced with the mistrust of Wolverhampton's black community, Roland Moyle, Deputy Chairman of the PCA, publicly appealed for witnesses to come forward and gave assurances that there would be no cover-up.
So I'm not biased against police in any way, but I mean, don't get me wrong, but the way that the police interviewed me wasn't what I'd call an interview. It was more like a miniature interrogation. Because the first thing that, as soon as I walk in there, to turn around and tell me about, are you aware that it could be perjury and all this type of thing, and I stated clearly, you know what I mean, I says, look, I've come forward as a witness, you know what I mean, because I see what is right and what's wrong, you know what I mean, and I don't know this fellow from Adam to Eve and all the rest of it, but I'm speaking out, you know, the truth, what I've seen.
As I explained to them, right, there was 3 people holding him down. The one at the front didn't need to use that much force. And the policeman says to me, how was the one at the front to know the customer that was holding Clinton at the back was there, right? It was pretty obvious. I mean, all you need to do is turn around like this. He's still got the neck in there. He could just turn around like that. But he was trying to get to me, right? Like, there was no way for him to know. The one at the front.
You've asked for your own independent post-mortem on the body. Why was that?
Because I know these police can do a lot of cover-up. And even though I asked for a private, I still does not put it past them that because these police have their way of getting around to people. They will buy them, they can, you know, encourage them in some form to take their side. You know, I hope that this is not the case. This is why I asked for a private one.
Bandung File approached West Midlands Police to ask for their participation in the program. Superintendent Burton declined. He said that any appearance would have to await the outcome of the Police Complaints Authority's report. An alliance of local black organizations under the umbrella of the Black Community Action Group has launched a campaign to assist the McCurbin family in their quest for justice. A demonstration in support of their demands took place on Saturday, the 7th of March.
That march was a very successful one, considering that on the day the elements were against us, the blizzards and so on, and over 3,000 people attended. The police came out in strength, as usual when black people are doing their thing, which is indicative of the strained relationship that the police maintain against black people throughout metropolitan Britain, not merely in Wolverhampton.
The 2 great points for the agenda tonight.
The Black Community Action Group holds regular meetings at the local community center. It is through their activities that the community has voiced its demands and its concerns in the McCurbin case.
What we are demanding now is an independent inquiry outside of the Police Complaints Authority. We also want the police, as a gesture of goodwill, to be detained. We want them to be tried like anybody else. And the black community has offered them a prayer in the final analysis, and that is, forgive them not, O God, for they know what they have done.
A number of witnesses have come forward and have given statements to us.
But yet, there are still some people in the community who haven't come forward. Because it could have been them that could have been killed in the shop.
Who will be next?
And who will be next? Right, who's going to be next?
The Police Complaints Authority has now completed its investigation. It is up to the Director of Public Prosecutions to decide whether or not to prosecute the officers involved on the findings of that report. But few in the black community have confidence in the Police Complaints Authority's impartiality, and few have faith in Roland Mall's assurances that there will be no cover-up. Is there anything else that you would like to say about your son?
No, I missed him a whole lot. I didn't get to enjoy him, you know, growing manhood, you know, as a son coming to visit mom and grandchildren. I always, oh, you got a girlfriend? You know, that part of Clinton I miss a whole lot. What can I tell you?
We now commit his mortal body to the ground, earth to earth, ashes to ashes, dust to dust.
I'm bitter and angry. And I feel stupid saying this, but no, I wish it would never happen to my brother, but happen to someone that I love as well, as I do.
I'm sure the police inquiry which they set up will and should be able to come up with some verdict of death where the police them can get some kind of a punishment out of it. And we're not seeking punishment for one human being to the next human being. We're seeking punishment and justice where there's too many people who doesn't care about one life to another life, not just a black life. Because I'm sure sooner or later going to reach a stage where no young person, black, is going to be safe here if they get away with this.